This is Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
I shudder thinking how the world can be so cruel. I lend my voice to those who can't. It's time we try, it's time we care, it's time we stand. It starts with a voice.
Welcome to the Special Chronicles show. My name is Daniel Smrokowski, and I'm the founder of Special Chronicles and a Special Olympics Southern Survival International Global Messenger and an EnergyForce Ambassador with ComEd. Our website, specialchronicles.com. We can stream archives of over 750 episodes absolutely for free, and follow Special Chronicles on social media, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. This week on the Special Chronicles podcast, EnergyForce series, season 6, part 8. Our guest is Michele Ptsazek, Marketing and Customer Education Manager at ComEd, who co-founded the EnergyForce Program. Is here to talk about the origin story of how the EnergyForce Program got started, as well as in the second half of the program, we'll celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So please put your virtual hands together as we welcome Michele on the Special Chronicles show. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you, Daniel. Oh. It's great to see you.
There you go. And I almost we got a little different setup than we usually do, so I've got to play the applause. But it's good to have you on the show. So to kick things off, why don't you introduce yourself and share with our listeners how we got connected, and then your connection to our disability community and your role with the EnergyForce program at ComEd.
Okay, happy to. So thank you again so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here today. So how we got connected, we actually met at the EnergyForce Ambassador training back in January of this year. And we talked about the podcast, and I told you I would be very happy to come on and talk about my experience with EnergyForce and with employment inclusion. So my connection to the disability community, I have a 21-year-old son named Vince who has Down syndrome. And so I've been a part of the disability community for a long time. And originally I was volunteering with Gigi's Playhouse. I did that for about 10 years. And I was on the board and did a lot for them. And then I started my job at ComEd, and within a year of starting it, I was able to co-found the EnergyForce program with my friend Paula Conrad.
Awesome. Yeah, we had Paula on the program, I think, a couple years ago. So I'll have to put a link in the show notes to that episode if our listeners wanna also hear from her. We're gonna take our first break, and when we come back, we'll get into how you started the EnergyForce program here at ComEd, as well as disability employment and inclusive employment a little bit later on in the program. So we'll be right back right here on SpecialChronicles.com. Support for Special Chronicles comes from listeners like you. As an independent public media podcast, Special Chronicles will always be there for you. Now we're asking you to be there for us. As a nonprofit independent media organization, we can only make programs like Special Chronicles with listener support. Our programs provide weekly, candid, honest, and inspiring conversations about the people with disabilities community that creates awareness, support, and advocacy within each week's episode. Listeners tell us our shows are an enjoyable and necessary podcast for the intellectual and developmental disability community and everyone else who is able to listen to stories about life from a different angle. Please, if you and your family love our weekly podcasts, make a one-time, monthly, or annual gift of thanks today. Support this podcast at specialchronicles.com/give. That's specialchronicles.com/give. So we mentioned you mentioned in the introduction, the beginning, about how along with Paula you started the EnergyForce program. Can you take us back of when? 'Cause I think it was more than 10 years ago. Can when you started the EnergyForce program and a little bit of the backstory of how it got started. Oh, I forgot to unmute your mic. There you go.
Awesome. So way back in 2011, I met Paula, and it was when I had first started working at ComEd. Now, Paula's the VP of Corporate Relations, but back then we were both managers, and we realized that we had a shared passion for people in the disability community, specifically Down syndrome, since both Paula and I have family members that have a Down syndrome diagnosis. So together, we talked about what EnergyForce would look like. We presented it to senior leadership. They gracefully approved pretty quickly. We're very excited about the idea, and we launched the program in 2012.
Awesome. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will know about the EnergyForce program because we mentioned ComEd and the EnergyForce program on every episode, of course on this series, on this podcast. But for any listeners who might not know, can you just tell us a little bit about what the EnergyForce program is?
Sure. So at its core, EnergyForce is a work opportunity that allows our ambassadors, who all have differing abilities, to grow and learn and interact in a really fun way, I think, with our community.
Awesome. And I know I've been involved. I think this is the 6th year that I've been involved in the program, and it's a really neat way, I think, to build upon a lot of job skills that we can then take into inclusive employment. So I found the EnergyForce program to be a really good foundation to like the foundation to then kind of use the skills when you go out and get a job.
I think that's a great way to put it. I think it is a foundational program. I think it does teach job skills. It teaches social interaction, and it can help people come out of their shell. We've noticed. There are some people that have really grown as a part of the program.
Yeah, absolutely. So why, of course, you started the program because of your son, but can you tell us a little bit more about why you wanted to start the EnergyForce program?
Yeah, absolutely. My son was an inspiration, and for Paula, her niece and nephew were inspirations, but I think that I really wanted to expand the diversity, equity, inclusion mission of ComEd and create meaningful opportunities for people with disabilities. That was really my motivation.
Awesome. And of course, with any program, I'm sure it has evolved over the years. So can you tell us a little bit about how the EnergyForce program has evolved from when you started it over 10 years ago to where it is today? And of course, like during the COVID pandemic, with having to switch to virtual kind of ways of engaging with the public, I'm sure it's kind of to put a little different spin on the program. But kind of over the years, how has the EnergyForce program
expanded?
Evolved? Expanded.
Yeah, great question. So there's a few ways that it has actually evolved over the years. I think the first way is the sheer number of ambassadors, Daniel. So we started in 2012 with 8 ambassadors from 8 different organizations, and now we have 28 ambassadors from 28 different organizations. So just the sheer number of ambassadors that we were able to employ and get out in the community and help to teach and grow. So that's exciting. Second, we've actually expanded the topics that are covered at the event. So we used to be strictly energy efficiency, all talking about energy efficiency tips, way to save money. and energy. And now we talk about solar and we talk about marketplace for ComEd. So that's, another angle. And then third, to your point, perfectly said, with COVID, we expanded. So instead of just the in-person events we used to do for the ambassadors, they're able to do digital presentations. So we are super excited to see all the social media posts that have been happening, the newsletter articles, the Zoom engagements, and of course, your podcast.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's been really neat to kind of even expand the skills to, of course, the in-person with the social interaction, but also to kind of learn kind of digital skills and how to engage with people in a virtual environment, as now we're doing a lot of engagements and just overall a lot of communication with the public with in-person and virtual. We're going to go ahead and take our next break, and then we'll get into, as October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, so we'll talk a little bit about inclusive employment after our next break right here on SpecialChronicles.com. We'll be right back. Support for Special Chronicles comes from ComEd. Special Chronicles is proud to partner with the ComEd EnergyForce Ambassador Program. The EnergyForce is the country's first energy efficiency education program designed for and taught by people with disabilities. ComEd is powering lives, and Wary is powering us here at Special Chronicles to keep the lights on and our technology is powered on. As ComEd powers the lives of us, they are literally giving a voice to people with special needs. We thank ComEd for the generous support of our mission at Special Chronicles. Learn more at specialchronicles.com/ComEd. That's specialchronicles.com/ComEd. Support for Special Chronicles comes from United Airlines Bridge Disability Business Resource Group. Special Chronicles is proud to partner with United Airlines and the Bridge BLG. Bridge BLG is committed to being an ally for all employees and customers with disabilities. Bridge helps to create internal awareness to keep accessibility needs in mind and partner with key organizations to empower disability inclusion for employment and travel. Bridge, connecting people of all abilities. Book your travel today on United.com or on the award-winning United app. Learn more on United's commitment to disability inclusion for employment and travel at specialchronicles.com/United. That's specialchronicles.com/United. And as in the last segment, we talked about how the EnergyForce program got started, and I think that's a good, as we mentioned, a foundation to inclusive employment. And so now, as we switch gears a little bit, as in October, and this episode is airing the first week of October, so we're kicking off and celebrating National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So, first, personally, for you, can you share your personal experience with inclusive employment and what inclusive employment personally means for you and your son?
Happy to. So, my son's in a vocational program in Naperville. This is his last year. You age out when you're 22. And so we started to look for employment for him a couple of years ago. And we were very fortunate to find Mod Pizza, which is a very inclusive company, hired my son, and he's been working there for over 2 years. He wanted some more hours, so we started looking again at the job opportunities for him, and he is now working at Advent Health in Bolingbrook and in the food prep area. So he's got 2 part-time jobs at the age of 21, and he's working about 20 hours a week. So, it's just a matter of looking to see what's out there, right? And just really being open to new opportunities.
Awesome. And now kind of switching gears to ComEd and in your job and kind of you mentioned in the last segment about how the EnergyForce program was kind of how you were able to bring that diversity, equity, and inclusion into ComEd. But how do you expand a little bit more into how? Because I think that's a good first step of how you were able to support inclusive employment at ComEd. But can you talk to us a little bit more about how you support inclusive employment at ComEd?
Absolutely. So I think to your point, EnergyForce needs to be taken to the next step, right? And so we recently learned that Exelon has a partnership with a company called Disability In, and they are a nonprofit resource that supports workforce inclusion. They have over 500 companies in their database, and their whole sole mission is to get people placed in suitable jobs and jobs that would make them feel happy. And so I partnered with our Exelon resource group, Enabled, and we are going to be able to be utilizing Disability In now to place employees in our own groups. So I reached out and asked first for our interns to be placed from Disability In. So next summer, I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to have an intern placed from that group. Also happy to share the URL for your listeners because they can also sign up through Disability In to be part of their database and be included by employers.
Awesome. So do all, like, how can our listeners sign up through Disability In? It's like, do they just Google Disability In, or is there any?
The URL, I'll give you the URL.
Yeah.
It's NextGen, so NEXTGEN @disability.org. And when you go there, you'll learn about the ways to apply and get included in the Disability In database. And then there are also opportunities for companies to sign up within that and be added to that group of 500 companies that's included.
Awesome. So I'm making a note of that to put it in the show notes. So it's nextgendisability.org, is it?
NextGen at disability.org.
Awesome. All right. So I'll go ahead and put that in. And if you want to email that to me after, so then I'll make sure to add that in the show notes for if any of our listeners want to get connected with Disability In. Tell us a little bit more about what you've learned about inclusive employment, as about like the importance of asking for accommodations, disclosing our disability, like in the job application, and asking for accommodations, and what have you learned through with your son and with your involvement with ComEd when it comes to what people should know about inclusive employment?
So I've learned that it is a truly personal decision whether or not you share your disability status. And so only speaking from an intellectual disability perspective with my son, I think if you know that there's testing required in order to interview for a job, it might be beneficial for you to disclose the disability so that you can get modifications on the testing and make sure that you guarantee yourself an interview. Accommodations may also be needed for the interview itself, right? So if you're going to be interviewing with standard questions or with behavioral-based questions, it might be good to put out that you might need accommodations in the interview as well. So all steps to get you to have a good interview and have a good interaction with the potential hiring manager.
Awesome. Well, we're going to take our final break, and then when we come back, we'll get into some more resources. You mentioned that one resource, NextGen at disability.org, but we'll get into maybe a few more resources after this final break as we get into our final segment on the Special Chronicles show on specialchronicles.com. We'll be right back. Special Chronicles is hosted by Podbean Podcast Hosting, the easiest, most affordable option to get started in podcasting. At Special Chronicles, we proudly host our weekly podcast with Podbean and highly recommend you use Podbean Podcast Hosting to get started in podcasting today. Sign up for an unlimited hosting plan and get 1 month free now to get started in podcasting today when you visit specialchronicles.com/Podbean. That's specialchronicles.com/Podbean. Our live streams are powered by StreamYard, the easiest way to create professional live streams. StreamYard is a live streaming studio in your browser. Interview guests, share your screen, and much more. Stream directly to Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and other platforms. Sign up for StreamYard today using our StreamYard referral link when you visit specialchronicles.com/StreamYard. That's specialchronicles.com/StreamYard. And in the last segment, you mentioned that one resource, NextGen at disability.org. But for as I think in the pre-show, you will when we were preparing for the podcast recording today, you had mentioned about the importance of transportation. So can you share with our listeners any resources for inclusive employment and how the topic of transportation of getting to work with discounted fares, how that's just as important?
Sure. So, transportation can be such a barrier to employment for so many. And so as my son gets older, I've learned about some new resources and options to get him to work when I can't and when my husband can't. So I've learned that Uber Access is a new option. And I have the URL for that too, Daniel, but it's long. So I'm going to give it to you so you can include it in the show notes. But essentially, it's an Uber app that can be used to book transportation for people with special needs. And I believe that it just launched very recently. And so that's one option. I know that there are local options for transportation. The one that we use is called Ride You Paid, and it services the Wheatland Township area of Illinois. There's also RTA mobility services where you can get a reduced fare permit. I know you and I talked about that.
Yep.
And so that's venturechicago.com or rtachicago.org. So there are options out there. I hate for transportation to be a barrier for employment for anyone.
So I definitely agree. Transportation is a big topic that when once getting the job is an important topic when whether you're talking with your job coach or you're talking with your supervisors or managers. It's an important topic to kind of bring into the conversation. It's not just about physically looking at the job, but also getting to work, getting home from work. So we're just about out of time, but we've got a couple final questions as we wrap up. Do you have any final thoughts on your overall time here today on the Special Chronicles show?
Oh, I just love being on. I'm so glad that you asked me to do this, and it's been a blast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been also kind of hearing about how the EnergyForce program got started and what ComEd is doing to take the EnergyForce program and inclusive employment to the next level. Because as we talked about, that's what I think a lot of companies are all doing is starting with like a basic understanding of what inclusive employment is, but then how do we continue to grow and to give more opportunities. So we got one final question, and we're going to go ahead and roll the bumper that will introduce this final question.
We're not just athletes.
We are the ambassadors of an uprising.
Peaceful protesters.
In a rebellion against anyone
who has a fear of difference.
Difference.
Our demands are
Equality.
Dignity.
and the recognition of our
Shared humanity. We will not stop
or accept anything less.
Today, our world is
More divided than ever.
and
coming together has never been more urgent.
The revolution
is inclusion. Find out more at jointherevolution.org.
So ever since I attended the 2019 Special Olympics World Games in Abu Dhabi, I've been, at least for the past 5 years, been asking all of the guests one final question, and so I'll do the same with you. The inclusion revolution is a big message in Special Olympics. I'm sure in the inclusion revolution, and inclusion is also important at ComEd. Of course, even here at Special Chronicles. So I'll conclude with you and ask you, what does inclusion mean to you?
Well, inclusion to me is the opportunity for people of all walks of life to be part of this world and to contribute and add value and to open our hearts and our minds.
Awesome. Well, that's a perfect way to wrap up this episode. And for those, thank you again, Michele, for coming on the Special Chronicles show. And for those of you listening, keep following the Special Chronicles podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're listening to this show, and you are listening on Apple, Spotify, or on any of those podcast apps, you may have noticed that the latest episodes may not have updated, so we are working behind the scenes with our feed. Maybe by the time you hear this, it might have already been fixed, but we are working. But for now, you can still listen right on specialchronicles.com, and just click on podcasts, and then you can find all of our episodes right on the website where you can stream and listen to this episode as well as all of our other episodes. And we got tons of content coming to you every Monday, 6 p.m. Central Time. SpecialChronicles.com is where you can follow us on social media. You can find those links and subscribe to our newsletter. So until next week, we'll be back with another episode. Have a great week, and remember, choose to include. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Special Chronicles podcast. Our podcast was produced by Daniel Smrokowski on the Special Chronicles Network. Follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Subscribe, rate, and review Special Chronicles on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Our website, specialchronicles.com, where you can stream our archives of over 500 episodes for absolutely for free. Also, there's a list of our favorites, original series, award-winning columns, and blogs. And sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive bonus content delivered to your inbox. Again, specialchronicles.com. Special Chronicles is hosted by Podbean Podcast Hosting. Our live streams are powered by StreamYard. Thanks as always to our business manager, Adam Smrokowski, who always encourages us to never give up. I'm Daniel Smrokowski, back next week with more stories.
Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.